This is America, Homestead, Florida, where there's an 1,100-ton castle made entirely of coral, and it was built by hand by one man. Charlottesville, Virginia, home of Thomas Jefferson's Monticello home and the University of Virginia, whose sports teams are the Cavaliers. Harbor Springs, Michigan, where there's a house made entirely of metal and shaped like a hexagon. Guess what it's called? The Hexagon House. Lookout Mountain, Georgia, where you've seen all those signs in the south that say, "See Rock City." Well, when you finally see Rock City, that's where you see it, in Lookout Mountain, Georgia. Mount Katahdin, Maine. That's the northernmost point of the Appalachian Trail, or as some people say, the Appalachian Trail. Columbus, Indiana, the Athens of the Prairie, which is full of modernist architecture. Carol went wild photographing that place, Columbus, Indiana. Sevierville, Tennessee, where you'll find the largest post and beam wood structure in the eastern United States. Don't ask me exactly what post and beam means. I guess it's one's vertical, one's horizontal. Lacombe, Louisiana. That's the gateway to the Bayou Sauvage National Wildlife Refuge. Sauvage in French means wild. Ephraim, E-P-H-R-A-I-M, Ephraim, Utah, where you can see an old Mormon co-op building called a ZCMI. The Mormons in that area would trade, say, hay that they'd harvested for a bed that somebody else had made. It was a big barter system at the co-op. Hopkinsville, Kentucky, home of Adlai Stevenson. Not that Adlai Stevenson, but this man was the vice president for Grover Cleveland. It was his grandson, Adlai Stevenson, who was the more famous of the Adlai Stevensons. This is America, Colchester and Essex, Vermont, where a number of 19th century cavalry officers' homes have been restored. Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where the historic village of Old Salem is lovingly preserved. Wells, Maine, that's home of Laudholm Farm, where you can see the gigantic James Way dairy barn. James Way barns were the creme de la creme of dairy barns. This is beautiful, big and yellow. Astoria, Oregon, once the home of John Jacob Astor, hence Astor Astoria. He was the baron of the Northwest fur trade. Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, home of the historic Mount Washington Resort Hotel and a famous economic conference, the Bretton Woods Conference, held there during World War II. Hugo, Oklahoma, that's the starting point of the 105-mile Indian Nation Turnpike. Speaking of highways, Clarksdale, Mississippi is the center of the Blues Highway in the Mississippi Delta. Wentworth, Kentucky, from which nurse midwives at the Frontier Nursing Service serve the hills and hollows and backwoods of Kentucky. Hanover, Kansas. That's the birthplace of This Is America videographer Connie Debley. Kalawao on Molokai Island, Hawaii, where the Flemish priest Father Damien ministered to a colony of shunned lepers, a place he called Kalawapapa. Father Damien's statue is one of the statues you'll find in Statuary Hall at the United States Capitol. This is America, Pine Bluff, Arkansas, where the locals say the Civil War really began. North Andover, Massachusetts, that's known as Turkey Town, great place to be on Thanksgiving. St. Augustine, Florida, where railroad tycoon Henry Flagler built an ornate hotel that is now a college, Flagler College. St. Joseph, Missouri, where Pony Express riders began their race west. Petal, P-E-T-A-L, Petal, Mississippi. That's home of the Checkers Hall of Fame. Crystal City, Texas, where you'll see a statue to Popeye the Sailor Man. Well, I'll leave it at that. Des Plaines, Illinois, where McDonald's got its start. You can see that original McDonald's, or perhaps it's a duplicate in Des Plaines, Illinois. Lake Tahoe, California, where there's a museum to the Donner Party. You may remember that the Donner Party folks were immigrants heading west who got trapped in a terrible snowstorm in the mountains. Some made it, some who didn't became food for others who did. They were known as the Donner Party cannibals. Boulder, Colorado, where you can see remnants of the Colorado Chautauqua Self-Improvement Society. We usually associate the Chautauqua movement with the East, specifically upstate New York, but it spread as far as Colorado and beyond. Mount Hood, Oregon, where there's something built by the old WPA, the Works Progress Administration. It's the rustic Timberline Lodge atop Mount Hood. This is America. New Roads, Louisiana, where Parlange Plantation, the oldest plantation still in the hands of the original family, still stands. In fact, we know Miss Lucy Parlange very well. She's a lovely and vibrant lady. Abilene, Kansas, where Seeley Mansion, S-E-E-L-Y-E, Seeley Mansion was built by a man who sold patent medicine out of wagons. He was one of the first so-called snake oil salesmen. Beverly Hills, California, where a waterworks building became the Motion Picture Academy's headquarters. Of course, Beverly Hills is better known for another place, the famous shopping mecca of Rodeo Drive. Seattle, Washington, where you'll find the nation's finest display of street clocks, of all things. There are more than 50 of them around town. Kohler, K-O-H-L-E-R, Kohler, Wisconsin, where your bathtub or your toilet may well have been made. Pawtucket, Rhode Island, where a vintage stainless steel diner that had been abandoned was saved and reopened. It's the modern diner. Bath, North Carolina, which is North Carolina's first settlement. It was founded in 1705. Yarmouth, Maine, or as the locals no doubt say, Yarmouth, Maine, where you find the world's largest globe, other than, of course, the globe itself. Battle Creek, Michigan, home of Kellogg's, and known as the cereal bowl of the world. Cape May, New Jersey, where you find one of the nation's finest array of Victorian houses. It's a seaside town, but it doesn't have the usual boardwalk and sort of summer lounging experience. It's much more of a staid place for B&Bs and so forth with its Victorian homes. This is America, Cleveland, Ohio, next door to my hometown of Lakewood, where the big grimy powerhouse that ran a railroad in the industrial section called the Flats became a shopping mall. Mystic, Connecticut, where more than 600 ships were built. Many of them were the famous whalers and the whaling fleet beginning in the 16th century. Atlanta, Georgia, the place they call Hotlanta for its weather and nightlife. Rochester, New York, where you find the homes of Susan B. Anthony, the famous women's rights pioneer, and George Eastman, the father of the Kodak camera. Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, the nation's summer capital, where people from as far away as Ohio, but more typically Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia come to relax in the summertime. Comstock, Nebraska, where a soddy, a prairie sod house was saved and restored for visitors. Merrimack, New Hampshire, well, you'll find Canterbury, one of the nation's best preserved Shaker villages. This was one of the homes of the famous Shaker people, the people named because of the way they violently danced in celebration of the Lord. Reno, Nevada, known as the biggest little city in the world. Lowell, Massachusetts, where you can tour one of those giant old cotton mills full of its original looms. Indianapolis, Indiana, where you can still dance at a romantic old place called the Roof Ballroom. It's not on the roof, but it's pretty close to it. It's on the top floor above an old theater.